was a little instrumental piece I called Lonnie's Blues, and I pieced it together with various licks, mainly by Lonnie Johnson. And the purpose of this lesson is, well, to show you that Lonnie Johnson licks are, you can use those in, well, any setting, and in other keys as well. In drop D tuning, and so the first 5 strings are standard tuning, and you drop down the 6th string to D. Lonnie Johnson played also in the key of D, and I'm talking about his pre-war recordings. After that he changed to standard tuning. But he used what they call a drop G tuning or G6 tuning. So also his 5th string was tuned down to G, which is handy if you play in the key of key of D, because you have an open string for the 1 chord, and you should have an open string then the G for the 4 chords. And in this lesson we're going to keep it simple and drop D tuning, and that's why when I play the 4 chord here, I use the partial G chord, G7, and Lonnie didn't use that chord at all. So if you're interested in the tablature, please open the video description below. I put some other links and so in that video description that could be of interest. So please open it. And let's start the lesson. Enough talk now. So drop D tuning. And we're starting with a lot of triplets. That's Lonnie's signature lick for those old recordings. And I'm playing the first double stop notes with my 2 fingers, because then I have power over the muting, which I do in the 3rd beat by resting my fingers, picking fingers on the strings. And I'm trying to play the bass, like the country blues bass, open and then muted with the side of your hand. Otherwise, this is an archtop guitar, and it's rather difficult to put your hand on the bridge. You could do that for some of the notes, but I simply try to play the country blues as much as possible, and otherwise it's slightly muted, slightly touched, but not completely like that. Alright. That's something that last beat Lonnie did often. Long, short. You should regard this as a 12/8 blues and not 4 quarters. I wrote it out in 4 quarters because that's much easier to understand. But you should regard every beat as a triplet. Try to put some dynamics here. So, third string, 2nd string, so triplet, going down, and then go down with the index. Move the 2nd finger to the 3rd string. This is a bit awkward, but it's the best way to do it. Open and slide on the 4th string. And sometimes he used this cool. He picked the 3rd, so in the last beat of the 2nd measure, he picked the 3rd string and the 4th string open. And then with an upstroke, the 4th string slides to the 4th fret, and you mute that open 3rd string at the same time, because otherwise it will sound like this. We don't want that 3rd string to ring into the next beat. So this finger is muting by tilting it slightly. It's a little bit fuller of sound. Then the 3rd measure. So again we're going to that 7th and 5th fret, to the 8th and the 10th fret, back to the 5th and 7th fret, partial D chord, up, and again try to work with dynamics. Or the other way around. Alright, let's do the first 4 measures one more time. Sorry. And then we're walking into the G7 chord. A trill in the 2nd beat. Note the muting. And straight into that. So that last beat of the 4th measure is in 1 beat. Cool lick, not typical Lonnie Johnson at all, but why not put it in there, it's cool. And you could play that in triplets, of course. Or something like that, but so in the 7th measure we go to the D chord. Again that bass. And sliding into the A chord. You can use a bar, of course. I prefer to do it like this with my 2 fingers. Well, the cowboy kind of A. And in the 8th measure we're pinching together the 3rd and the 5th string. And then we have a cool lick. And that's something typical of Lonnie Johnson, those well, changes in speed, you could say. Slide to the 7th fret. I do it with the pinky. And then in 1 beat, that's 1 beat. And then a triplet. Da, da, da. And it helps of when a difficult lick like this, visualizing it in your brain. And also important, those little bass notes in between measures, they tie it together. Sorry. And then in the 9th measure, let it ring into the next beat, and then no picking, just slide to the 7th fret. Again, the last beat, last note of that 10th measure, that bass that ties it together. You know, Lonnie Johnson was very fond of diminished chords, and he used that often as turnarounds in the 11th measure. Rest and pick it up. A7. And then we're going to the 2nd verse. And the 2nd verse, that the first 6 measures, are typical of his playing after the war when he played in standard tuning. He often did those things like that. If you listen to his recordings and his solos, especially the solo which he did on the DVD of the British tours, I think, and sadly it is not on YouTube anymore. The owners, when somebody plays it, uploads it, the owners quickly remove it. Alright, the second measure, sorry, the second verse. And I don't think, I'm not counting the beats here. So if you add or subtract a beat when you go do those bends, don't worry about it. If you play alone, that's not a problem at all. So we're going up and going down, and you can vary the force of the attack there, the dynamics. And then 4 beats and 3 beats. This is the same as before, so we're walking into that G7. Again, that trill and that mute. And now we're going, this is something Lonnie also did often. Instead of our second measure in G, we're going to a G chord up the neck. So the 13th fret, the 12th fret, and moving in between. Here. So, and you can do that in double time or not. I did it slightly faster. As slow as possible. So don't do that. Take your time to do that slide. So that you're there just before that beat, first beat of the 19th measure. And you can play it faster or slow, whatever you want. And then we're going back to the normal rhythm. Slide into the D chord, pull off. And you may have noticed when there's happening, a lot of things happening in the trebles, I mute the bass more. And when that's over, the last beat of that 20th measure, we can let it rain. A very cool lick there. All triplets. And I accent often the first beat of those triplets. Maybe not all, but some. Again, that intermediate bass there. Sorry. You see another variation of that signature lick. Let it ring into the next beat and then go back to normal. And another variation. And watch my left hand fingers I think that's the only way, well, the best way to do it, and it's a bit awkward and unusual that you would do 1, 2, 3, 4 3 frets with the same finger. And right hand index. All right. Typical G chord, which he used often as a sort of turnaround. And then we go into the third verse and try to do that slide as slow as possible so that it ends at and start at the second fret. Or the first even. And again, I'm accenting really hard. And also note that with all those double stops in this song, I'm hitting the strings, the first 2 strings, so hard that the third string, open string, will ring. And we don't want that, of course, because it's kind of messy. So I mute with my fretting finger by simply sliding it upwards a little bit so that the third string is muted. So hard that you almost get a percussive effect. Notice the muting also. Alright. B.B. King, yeah. You know, one of the influences for B.B. King was Lonnie Johnson. And I'm certain that he got that fantastic vibrato. He learned that from Lonnie. And he made it even sound better. Alright. Very strong bass also. This is also a very good exercise, this song. And that's what I notice that some students have difficulty with. When the bass stops, so the rhythm stops, and you have to play single string run for a full measure, it's sometimes hard to pick up the beat. And this is a good exercise to learn that. Sometimes I'm muting with this finger as well. Sorry. No. That's it. Mute with the pinky finger. And bend and pull off, and then the third string of the 4th fret. Same thing as measure 26. And then in measure 29, I'm really hitting all the strings, well, almost all the strings, certainly the 4th, 3rd and 2nd, and I mute that with my left hand index finger, or the palm also a little bit. And I'm hitting with my 2 fingers here. So I'm not sure which one hits the string first, but they're both in action there. And here we have a partial D7 chord. It's your C7 chord. You move your outer fingers to the 1st and the 3rd string and move it up. So you have a D7. And then the chord. And I mute the fourth string, the open string. You can fret it, of course. It's a little bit fuller. So I think it's one beat, but you can let it ring a little bit longer. So we had that, the beginning of the 30th measure. So it's a hit down, and I'm immediately going to the 10th fret with my pinky, and I'm muting all the strings. Try it at least. That the third string rings is no problem because we're playing licks in G, the 4 chord. But I tried to keep us well, clean and dry sounds. So, trill, bend down, pull off, and then the third string, 4th fret. Sorry. I'm really getting messy here. The transition to, that will take some practice, I guess. Oh, there are other solutions for that. I'm used to doing like this. Very typical Lonnie Johnson. Did a lot of variations on that. And I try the first bass of the 32nd measure and the third bass to play those open, to accent them. Slide down, 5th string, and into the A7. Double bass. So after that, slide to the 3rd fret, 2nd string, and so that slide, that 1st fret, a 1st string, it is not picked, it is just a slide back. So that's Lonnie Blues. Have fun with it.